So I'm going to go ahead and clarify exactly what I was going to go ahead and clarify in court. That would have made all the difference, because the height difference matters, the details matter, point of impact matters, when going to assess damages, all right, and calculating damages. So I want to go ahead and show, all right? So the vehicle in question. Now, keep in mind, I'm showing you the model vehicle. I am not saying the factor that their pricing is accurate, because understand, their pricing is predatory as fuck. Alright? So, literally, trying to assess the damages and everything and using predatory upcharge, inflated numbers, that would constitute as fraud. Alright? So, for example, right here, 1987 GMC Jimmy. Notice, in this it says 63,984 miles. Now, keep in mind, with it saying 63,984 miles, but it being a 1987 GMC Jimmy, legally, the way that somebody could get away with, advertising that, despite the fact that the odometer is not going to say that, is, oh, I was reporting the amount of miles on the engine, not on the vehicle as a whole. Alright? But notice the price. Alright? So apparently in 2024, 1987 GMC Jimmy, they're trying to claim that it is a $28,000 vehicle. Now I want you to go ahead and tell me, for $28,000, what vehicle would you buy? Because there's a lot more of a range, But also, another factor I was going to go ahead and bring up, alright? The GMC Jimmy, it is 73 inches tall, alright? So, we are talking from the ground, alright? So, with the GMC Jimmy being 73 inches tall, I know you're probably wondering, how tall was the Scion? Great question, very important question in the situation. 62.6 inches, alright? So that means you got to go ahead with a ruler, alright, and measure out 10 inches of distance, right? So, 10 inches exactly. So, how big is 10 inches? Let's go ahead. And by the way, we could go ahead and give the jokes all day long about, guys magically forgetting how to measure when, it comes to whipping out their private members. But let's try to keep it classy and being straightforward on this, alright? So a 10-inch difference, alright? So if you're measuring from the tread line to the Volkswagen emblem, alright? So, half a tire of distance, alright? Now keep in mind, if we're talking the size difference on a truck in comparison to that coupe, and we're talking from headlight to headlight, alright, so from the bracing point of the headlight, right there, it would end up going to the midpoint right there on the truck, alright, so this whole area right here, alright, so I ended up doing the calculations on where the point of impact would end up being without needing either vehicle in front of me. And yes, I'm that fucking nerdy when it comes down to going ahead and giving my assessments and the details and the nuances of it. Alright? So, the GMC Jimmy that ended up going ahead and heading into the Scion, it had one of these on it. Alright? Now go ahead and take a look where I measured the point of impact. And by the way, this is a happy coincidence, but if you go ahead and take a look at the area that I eyeballed, without pulling out that tape measure, without going ahead and showing where that crease point that ends up going ahead and meeting the 10-inch mark, where the actual point of impact was, without either vehicle in front of me. So literally straight eyeballing it, all from memory. All right. So the point of impact being right there. All right. Now with a 10-inch difference in, level of light and everything, ultimately, the Jimmy going ahead and hitting into me, going head on, because of the that 10-inch height difference, ultimately, the Jimmy ended up going ahead and crashing into the, passenger side headlight in a head-on collision, going 50 and a 30. Keep in mind, has a great height, height difference as far as weight difference as far as, the distribution of weight on impact. All right. So the factor that the Scion was facing this way, the Jimmy was coming this direction, going 50 to 30, I'm at a complete standstill. Had I tried to go and hit the gas pedal to try to rush through, that would have been the fatal flaw that would have killed me. All right. That right there, it would have ended up by the point, of me trying to go from 0 to, full motion, with them going 50 to 30 with no intention to stop, which is the reason that I pointed out is, reckless endangerment as well as attempted vehicular manslaughter. Ultimately, the actual point of impact, while trying to go ahead and say claim fault or, try to convince anybody nobody will believe you. It's like, hey, money is pretty much a good incentivizer for anybody that had any intention to perjure themselves to try to get away with insurance fraud. All right, so point of impact, I even measured out exactly where, that point of measurement on the Volkswagen right there that was used for the height example, to go ahead and show where the difference of that, impact would end up being. So it ended up hitting right next to the corner of the metal, bumper. Now keep in mind, with having that grille, it also had right here for GMC Blazer front bumper, overall $412.76 for the bumper, and $230.80 for the for the brush guard. All right, so that right there is a total of about $700. All right, well, wanting to have that car declared totaled, like paying for full damages and everything. All right, well, wanting to claim that a 1987 GMC Jimmy with just under 70,000 miles, that apparently, the market value, to go ahead and measure as the cost assessment, when somebody else wanted to pay $28,000. All right. So now, let's go ahead and Google, what new car could I buy for $28,000? Oh, would be able to afford a used 2018 Tesla Model 3 with only 55,000 miles on it for, $27,000. That feels like it would be a little more price adjacent, as far as when it comes to accuracy, 2020 Subaru Forester with only 39,000 miles on it. So apparently an 87 GMC Jimmy with just under 70,000 miles on the engine is apparently evaluated and worth the same amount as a 2020 Subaru Forester. All right, with just under 39,000. Now, if you go ahead and ask a consumer, All right. You have to go ahead and go in blindly off the details that I'm going for. All right. You get to walk out of this, this showroom with one vehicle. All right. Now, ultimately, we're not going to tell you what the better vehicle is. We're not going to tell you what, the better bang for your buck in the situation is. But we've got this extraordinary, magnificent 1987 GMC Jimmy. All right. It has just under 70,000 miles on the engine. Not on the odometer, on the engine. Just remember that engine was swapped. All right. So technically, not defrauding you, not defrauding you. Can't believe that you think this is actually a good idea, not defrauding you. All right. Or you can go ahead and go with option number 2. You got a 2020 Subaru Forester with 39,000 miles, fully loaded with all the accessories, all right, as well as fully interactive system to go ahead and handle all your GPS navigation, intertechnology linking capabilities to be able to, utilize, your mobile device as well as your vehicle to be able to, set up a fully interactive set. So that way, when you go ahead and you go on long road trips and everything, there is something for every member of the family to be able to keep them entertained. Tired of your kid kicking the back seat of your car in the process of a road trip? Hey, no big deal. They go ahead and they've got that little plug-in, compartment right at the back of the armrest. So that way you could go ahead, plug their tablet, hook their tablet right up to the GPS, go ahead, kick on the internet. They could go ahead and stream whatever movie they're wanting and everything. So that way it could go ahead and put those little restless legs to rest. I don't know about you, but I feel like anybody with common sense automatically would choose the Subaru Forester. So, ultimately, I know you want to sell me a bridge that, try to convince me that, apparently $28,000 is a fair assessment for your late 80s Jimmy. Because apparently what exceptional capability does it have, But I don't think that a jury is going to go ahead, especially with, the factor that physics matters, that measurements matter, that point of impact matters, that weight distribution at point of impact ends up going ahead and matter, the factor that the Scion was, still fully at brake. Well, the person that was going ahead and coming, out of nowhere was going 50 and 30. And that the only reason that the brake even ended up going ahead and happening was because of the factor if I would have attempted to speed forward, I could have ended up going ahead and losing traction on the brakes and potentially ended up driving into an urgent care clinic, which was not a risk that should anybody be willing to take. So, which was the lesser of two evils? Braking, not taking any chances, knowing the factor that with that car going to hit me, ultimately where I ended up going and braking ended up being the difference of getting rolled off a hill and dying in a fire explosion, but, or going ahead and, because of not braking. And if I didn't end up going ahead and getting hit by the Jimmy that was going ahead and rushing at me, with the amount of speed that I would have need to go ahead and build up, by going from 0 to nothing, by trying to gun forward, ultimately, that would have acted like a slingshot effect, when it comes to the actual process of the building up the rotations per minute, in the car. I know, seems like, oh, Scion, what could that little thing do? Well, that thing could do a hell of a lot more than people give it credit for. That's what the fuck that could do. Alright? But ultimately, if I would have ended up doing that, regardless of how significant or insignificant that detail is, if I would have gone forward, there would have been a risk of me potentially going ahead, overshooting how fast I would need to gun it, as well as how fast I would need to simultaneously brake, potentially end up going ahead and causing the calipers to lock up on the Scion, which would have ended up going ahead and sending me head-on, fully, especially if the timing belt would have ended up snapping, directly into crashing right into the lobby of an urgent care center. So, I want you to tell me, in that situation, how would you have handled it? And would you have been able to handle it better? Now, as far as damage, the only damage that there was that bumper that ended up going ahead and bending. A piece of metal bending. You know, it's kind of like, you know, it's metal that usually in the process, you know, you could go ahead and heat it up and bend it back into place, you know. So, like, for example, take that situation with that, you know, bumper. Could have got ahead and, for example, if it basically taken the bumper off, all right, gone ahead and basically heated up water in a, you know, like a metal container, like an elongated one, to get it as hot as possible to go ahead and cause a little bit of malleability in the steel, all right. Then gone and used a vice grip, or, you know, like I said, if you're needing a, you know, use as a portable vice grip, you could go ahead and use the plunger on a caulk gun, all right. It'll go ahead and act as a, you know, in case of emergency, up Schitt's Creek without a paddle, no C-clamp alternative, all right, which literally would have enabled to use a leverage point, going ahead and holding the tip of the caulk gun with the right hand, putting pressure against the tip, all right, while using at the handle of the caulk gun, going and, you know, putting pressure like that, and then, that motion's kind of familiar. It seems very similar to one that people would end up using in the process of auto mechanics. A simple process. Oh, that's right. That's the same motion that you would end up going ahead and using in the process of using a T-bar wrench to, you know, go ahead and try to break, you know, the threading point in the process of trying to, you know, break out a rusted-in, you know, bolt. So, that same motion that you would end up using to put enough strength, basically, if you have enough strength to be able to change a tire, you would have had enough strength to be able to bend that bumper back into place. While simultaneously, do you know what out-of-pocket cost there would have been to anybody involved? Which, talking to me nicely, could have gotten that solved for you a hell of a lot sooner. It would have cost anyone involved $0. Literally $0.